These allegations are obviously very, very important. No, it must be very difficult for him in particular and his family and his friends to hear that.
Revisiting our top story on Canada tonight and the foiled assassination plot against a former Justice Minister. Canadian human rights advocate Irwin Cotler says he was informed by the RCMP that Iran was planning to assassinate him. Cotler is a harsh critic of the Iranian regime and campaigned to have the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps listed as a terrorist entity. The Globe and Mail first reported the alleged plot. Cotler confirmed the story to Radio-Canada, saying he was told about it late last month. RCMP agents have since informed him there is no longer a threat. For more on this, I want to bring in Daniel Stanton. He is a former executive manager of operations at CSIS. Daniel, good to have you here on Canada Tonight.
Oh, my pleasure to be here.
Your thoughts here. Are you shocked to hear that there was this Iranian plot to assassinate Irwin Cotler?
Well, initially I was shocked that, Mr. Cotler is a very prominent Canadian spokesperson on human rights and speaking against the regime. But if you look at transnational repression and what regimes like Iran do, they do pick people of prominence, people with status, outspoken critics, for targeting like this. And in that respect, it's not a shock.
Tell me the messaging behind this, because we know that other human rights advocates, he himself has criticized the Iranian regime, as you mentioned there. But unlike most who've spoken out against Iran, he, of course, was targeted in this case. So sort of pull away the layers on this for a little bit, if you can, in terms of the messaging.
We've been seeing this, 3 years ago, there was a plot in the States, the Ministry of Intelligence and Security of Iran, and they involved a couple of Canadians, one with Hell's Angels. Then there was a plot very recently against President-elect Trump and Masih Alinejad, who's a Iranian American woman, very outspoken against the regime in Iran. And now we're finding an individual, a Canadian, has been targeted quite some time ago. So, if they're going to do this in the United States, it can't be a shock that they would try this in Canada.
How connected then is the foreign interference and all of those concerns that, of course, we know that the government is being pushed on to be dealing with to ensure that Canadians, and of course now in this case, individuals like Irwin Cotler, are safe?
Well, that's it. It's the darker side of foreign interference, where communities, generally diasporic communities, are targeted by these regimes. They use what is very effective in their country, which is crushing dissent, and they simply export that and do that in Western countries like this. But they have to use criminals. They have to use these middle persons that are kind of unsavory, and they're not that secure. They're not that discreet, and in some cases they get caught. But we're seeing this with Russia. We're seeing this with Iran. We're seeing this with India, and we're seeing this with some other states where they engage these types of people to conduct surveillance and for targeting them, for killing them.
Now, in this case, of course, we know that that plot was foiled, and that's by efforts, of course, by the RCMP, and Irwin Cotler was given, as we understand it, 24 hours a day protection. But looking at a situation like this, as you pointed out, it's not just an isolated incident. There are many. Looking at Canada specifically, are we well equipped? Did the RCMP handle the situation well? Are we able to handle other situations, other cases like this?
Well, we were fortunate. It appears to be like the other plots. There was good intelligence in advance, so that precautions could be made and Mr. Cotler's safety could be ensured. But at some point, there may be an intelligence failure. There's only limited capacity in terms of doing this. And what Canada's doing in all these situations is we're reacting to it. We're, trying to protect people and then lay criminal charges. But at some point, I think we need to find some way of pushing back, a whole of government approach to whatever way we could with a country like Iran, instead of just always reacting or waiting and being fortunate in picking up this information and being able to act on it. But I'm afraid sometime we might not, and there might be a failure.
Yeah, which of course then raises the alarm bells and the concerns in terms of, protection of individuals, protection of all Canadians. In this particular case, do we know, anything more about these suspects, whether they are in the country, whether they fled, whether they've been arrested, or that process is underway?
It could be very similar to what happened with India, where there was intelligence on some of the plots, some of the plans, and then law enforcement action took place much, much later. So they could very well be in Canada. They could already be under some sort of surveillance. And the RCMP has probably been collecting evidence for prosecution purposes for quite some time. And it'll probably be a while until we hear anything about that.
Really quickly then, Daniel, what are you watching for then? I mean, as we say, this is not an isolated case.
I think it's just an appreciation for Canadians that we're not immune from this. We tend to think we are because we're such nice people and polite, but we are impacted by what goes on in the world. And we can't have the illusion that, a country like Iran is not going to reach out and try to kill Canadians on Canadian soil to send a message, because that's what they've been doing.
Daniel, really appreciate getting your time, your analysis on this. Daniel Stanton, a former executive manager at CSIS, speaking to us from Ottawa. Daniel, thank you again for this.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.